Rana is recording herself talking to the camera. Janyu curiously asks, "Rana, what are you doing?" Rana responds, "Let's go. Come with me to the woods." Janyu, puzzled, inquires, "What for?" Rana explains, "I want to make a gift for Mom's birthday." "My goodness, Rana. Okay, hang on a minute." Janyu timidly complies, goes, and gets ready. It's now the next day, and Rana's family and the entire village are searching for her, as she is now missing. Rana's family members are visibly worried, and even after all the efforts and hard work, no one finds Rana. It has now been a week since Rana went missing. Most of the family members assume that Rana is no longer alive, so they organize a ritual called Talil, which is usually performed when someone in the family has died. Rana's body has not yet been found, so there is no concrete sign of Rana's death. Yet, the family goes ahead and performs the Talil ritual. Rana's mother, Dini, is not at all happy with this ritual, as it was done under the pressure of the other family members. She starts crying while remembering the last encounter between her and Rana. After the ritual is completed, Rana's paternal aunts, Nur, Sri, and Ning, start discussing which date should be written on Rana's obituary. The date of her disappearance, or the date when the official search for her was stopped. Nur, who's reading the Primbon book, replies, "Not the day of her disappearance, as it was the day of the dead, basically a cursed day. Hence, the date when the search for Rana was stopped should be written." Dini, hearing all this, gets angry. She tells them, "You people have become superstitious after reading the things written in that Primbon book. Rana's body has not been found. See, my daughter will definitely return." Just as they're talking, there's banging on the door. It's none other than Rana, all drenched in rain without any clothes on. Dini is overcome with joyful tears while embracing her. She then immediately tends to Rana. Sri and Ning engage in a conversation about Rana's surprising return after a week, finding it peculiar and raising suspicions that she might be a spirit. Upon hearing them, Rana's father, Banyu, sternly tells them, "Your niece has returned. Stop talking about bad stuff." Later, as Nur, Sri, and Ning, who are also neighbors of Banyu, make their way back home, Nur catches the sound of a cuckoo bird's chirping, which is traditionally seen as an ominous sign. While Rana is showering, Dini, who forgot to place the towel in the bathroom, asks Rana's younger sister, Tari, to bring it to her. Tari calls out to Rana and asks her if she's finished showering, but she receives no response. Curious, Tari peeks under the bathroom door, but doesn't see Rana's feet. Suddenly, Rana appears in front of her, startling Tari and causing her to retreat in fear. Banyu tells Dini, "I'd better call a doctor just in case if anything happened to her. We'd be prepared," also mentioning Nur's advice to be cautious. Dini becomes furious upon hearing this, stating there's no need to take her to the doctor. She questions him, asking, "Are you afraid of your own daughter? Our daughter has returned after missing for a week. Aren't you happy with this? I know your sisters have poisoned your mind, but their blind belief in the Primbon book is driving them crazy." Before going to sleep, Tari tells Rana how their parents have been constantly fighting and how much they have missed her, especially their mom, who hasn't stopped crying since she went missing. Tari mentions that their mother didn't even celebrate her own birthday. She then asks Rana if she made the present for their mother, but receives no response. Tari continues, expressing how much she missed Rana and that she's happy that she's now back home, before turning away and starting to sob. Tari suddenly feels a hand caressing her, assuming it's Rana, but when she immediately turns to check, she finds Rana sleeping on the other bed, facing the opposite direction. Finding it strange, Tari dismisses it as just an illusion. The next morning, as Banyu prepares to leave the house for work, he catches sight of Rana calmly eating noodles. However, when he glances back after a few seconds, Rana is nowhere to be seen. As Banyu makes his way towards the door, suddenly, Rana is in the same spot, standing motionless, her gaze fixed upon him with unsettling intensity. Banyu, a fish seller, arrives at the market and begins setting up his stall. As he works, his mind drifts back to his last conversation with Rana before she disappeared, where she had pleaded with him for permission to go to the woods. Lost in thought, he recalls his words to her. Basuki, Shri's husband and also a fish seller, interrupts his reverie. "You'll cut your thumb instead of the fish," advising him to be careful. Basuki then asks about Rana's health and urges Banyu not to dwell too much on what his sisters say from the Primbon book. Meanwhile, in the village, a small local festival is underway. Janu is seen looking extremely terrified as he rushes somewhere. Tari happens to pass by and notices Janu. She stops and questions him, asking if he's aware that Rana has returned home and if he doesn't want to see her. Visibly scared, Janu responds, "It can't be. No, this is just not possible," before hastily running away. Tari turns around and is startled to see one of the masked performers at the festival, prompting her to also run away from there. On the other hand, Ning is seen preparing a protection tray with flower petals. Nur explains that if the flowers wilt immediately, then Rana is not human. Rushing to Banyu's house, Ning places the tray in Rana's room under her bed. However, just as she does so, Rana appears right beside her, silently observing. Rana creepily mentions, "You loved braiding my hair, right?" and hands Ning a comb and a hair tie, signaling for her to braid her hair. Ning nervously begins to comb Rana's hair, all the while recounting stories from the Primbon book at Rana's request. Suddenly, Ning spots maggots on Rana's head, filling her with horror. Ning quickly leaves the room and finds Shri, who seems confused. With a worried tone, Ning explains that she saw maggots on Rana's head and couldn't stand the smell. She also mentions how the cuckoo bird has not stopped singing in front of Banyu's house since the day Rana went missing. They both come to the unsettling realization that Rana may be deceased, yet they're confused because they can still see her in flesh. Janu is in the library, engrossed in some books, likely the Primbon books, when suddenly, paranormal activities begin to unfold around him. Janu senses the presence of Rana and even sees Rana's ghostly figure near him. Despite his fear, Janu realizes that Rana doesn't intend any harm to him. On the other hand, Ning, who's reading the Primbon book, and Sri, who's sleeping, are being attacked by spirits. Hearing their screams, Nur goes to check what is happening. While her reflection gets stuck in the mirror, she immediately prays, and she manages to save them both. The next morning, Sri anxiously makes her way to collect the flower tray that Ning had placed under Rana's bed. She peeks down the bed and notices that all the content in the tray has dried and spoiled. Just then, Banyu comes home. Hearing the noise, Sri quickly rushes out of the room. Banyu is surprised to see her and asks, "What are you doing here?" Suddenly, Rana appears there, holding the same tray in her hands, but all the contents are perfectly fresh. "Aunt Shri, you're looking for this, right?" Rana asks. Shri immediately takes the tray and leaves from there. On the way, the tray falls from her hand, and once again she notices that the contents are all dried and spoiled. Banyu tells Rana to eat her meal and informs her that a doctor is on the way. He sits down with her for lunch when suddenly Rana starts bleeding from her nose. When the doctor arrives and checks the pulse on Rana's hands, he does not find any pulse. He also tries to check Rana's heartbeat with a stethoscope, but does not hear any sound. He then asks Rana to open her mouth. While checking, the doctor starts seeing worms around Rana's mouth. He gets scared and runs to the bathroom. Even in the bathroom, the doctor sees Rana's shadow and figure, which frightens him more. He tells everyone that Rana is absolutely fine and immediately runs away from there. By now, Nur and Ning had also arrived at Banyu's house. They tell Banyu and Dini about Rana's spirit and how Rana's spirit has become a magnet for other bad spirits, attracting them to this property. However, Dini doesn't believe them and brushes them off. After coming back home, Ning's anger flares as she bitterly reminds Shri about something that deeply upsets her and Basuki. It's revealed that Shri and Basuki have a son who, like Rana, went missing but, to this day, has not returned. Remembering her son, Shri starts crying uncontrollably. Basuki starts comforting her. His own emotions roar with the memories of their lost child. The next day, Tari goes to the library where she meets Janu. She questions him about why he suddenly ran away from her the other day and why he still hasn't come to meet Rana. Janu explains everything to Tari about what happened in the forest and how Rana got lost there. He blames himself for not being aware that it was a cursed day for Rana. Janu adds that people who are lost in the forest have a 10% chance of being alive. Yet after 7 days, Rana had returned by herself. Not only this, but since the day of her disappearance, Rana has been frightening him. He also tells Tari that, in order to find Rana, her purification needs to be done. Tari starts crying, overwhelmed by memories of her sister. Nur, Shri, and Ning feel tense and fearful as they find themselves surrounded by numerous evil spirits outside their house. Nur informs everyone that a cleansing ritual for Rana should be done. Just then, at the request of her mother, Rana arrives to deliver food for everyone. With Rana's arrival, an atmosphere of fear descends upon the house. Basuki asks Rana if she would be okay with a cleansing ritual being performed for her. Rana agrees to it, but questions her aunts about why they do not believe her mother, and leaves from there. As everyone gathers at Banyu's house, Nur urges Dini to conduct a cleansing ritual for Rana, but obviously Dini is not happy about the idea. The atmosphere gets heated with conflict. Banyu steps in to calm Dini, persuading her to allow his sisters to proceed with the ritual. He assures her that there's nothing to fear. If Rana is indeed normal, the ritual won't affect her, but if she is a spirit, the cleansing will reveal the truth. Amidst the chaos, Tari becomes overwhelmed with emotion and hugs Rana, finally seeing her real ghostly face. The next day, preparations for the ritual began. During this time, Tari and Janyu head into the woods. Basuki notices them and asks where they're going. Tari explains that after the cleansing ritual, spirits' bodies are usually found, suggesting they might find Rana's body in the woods. Basuki tries to stop them, but they continue into the woods, undeterred. As the cleansing ritual progresses, Rana begins to feel pain and starts seeing other spirits she has attracted. Some of the people gathered for the ritual also started behaving strangely, as if possessed. Night falls, but Tari and Janyu remain in the woods, still searching for Rana's body. They eventually get separated and lose each other. Meanwhile, the ritual is successfully completed, purifying Rana's spirit. Tari and Rana finally reunite, sharing an emotional hug. Rana's soul then transforms into a physical body. By this time, Janyu also finds Tari. Together, they bring Rana's body back to the village, where Rana's parents and family are deeply moved by the sight. Mom, I was going to give this special gift to you, but the weather today is bad. I know you're the strongest person in the world. Don't ever listen to anyone who tells you that your birthday is on a cursed date. All the facts show we're all going to be fine, right, Mom? Rana records herself in the woods. Happy birthday, Mom. Please keep this video, because I want you to know that I will always be with you. She ends the recording with a soft smile, hoping to bring comfort to her mother. And that's it for today's video. What do you think of this movie and its plot? Do share your thoughts. And hey, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and make sure to click on the bell notification icon so you never miss any of my future videos. See you in my next video. Until then, stay curious, stay cautious, and sweet nightmares.